Well, great to have your company this Wednesday evening. You're live watching us here, or we're live, you're watching us at Revelation TV. My name's Anne Dawson, and this is the first of a monthly special of Speaker's Corner. For those of you that have been with Revelation TV for quite some time, you will recall we used to do batches of 3 months, and then we'd have 3 months on, 3 months off, etc. We are now going to be doing it month in, month out, and I'm delighted to say this is the first one, kick-starting September's monthly special of Speaker's Corner. And no stranger to us here at Revelation TV, we have Mr. Philip Day. It's good to be on with you again. Welcome along.
It's very special to be here on the first one.
Well, we're very excited because, Philip, over the years that you've been appearing with us here at Revelation TV, you have brought us an absolute, unadulterated wealth of information on this subject of health, and also a lot of subjects connected to that. Many of our viewers will be well aware of the tours that you do going around the country, really increasing awareness on the importance of what we put in our bodies, but also what we think about as well, what we put in our minds. You've got a very special tour which links into the topic for tonight, and you may have seen the topic for tonight on the programme guide. It is stress in the 21st century. And for many of you, you'll just be thinking, well, yeah, stress, know all about it, but maybe not familiar with how do we actually ascertain how to get out of a stressful situation, or, you know, what it is all about at the end of the day, and how do I know my stress level? You often talk about the hamster wheel, so we're talking about a whole host tonight. This is your tour that you're doing, and I find it personally really, really amazing, but very encouraging that all of your tours have been about general health. What made you decide to do an entire tour based on stress?
Well, I field many phone calls during the course of a month, and I just noticed from the start of the year, and it had nothing to do with Brexit, I'm sure, but from the start of the year, I was getting call after call after call. Philip, I'm buried in stress. I'm waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm anxious, I'm fearful, I've got feelings of doom, all of these things. And it just kept coming at me, and I thought, you know what? I've got September to November, and we can fit in maybe 16 regional events around the UK. And let's really tear the guts out of this thing and find out why people are getting stressed. And more importantly, what are the mechanisms behind why people feel the way they do? And they seemingly can't control it, or it overwhelms them. And what's interesting is a lot of good news we're going to be dealing with tonight.
There is indeed. And of course, you know, the programme, as always, because as I said at the beginning, we are live here, we're interactive, so we want your participation as well. We'd love to take your emails and your texts. If you've got questions for Philip, you've got comments, the details there are on your screen, and we'll be popping them up periodically so that you too can get involved, because that's the whole point of the programme. We want you, the viewer, to be involved in these topics, and really, as you say, I like that expression, you know, tear the guts out of this. Well, I think to start with, let's just talk about maybe what stress is, because many of us, we might, you know, we hear the word bandied around, we read articles about it in the newspaper, it's on the television, you know, what exactly is stress, and how do I know if I'm suffering from it and it's not just a heavy schedule, for example?
Well, people will experience stress if they're, for instance, going to do a public speaking engagement, or if they're going into a competitive sport. So we're all really familiar with how that feels from our school days. Then when we get into the big bear pit of the 20th century and 21st century, and we get our first jobs, we understand, you know, you lost your keys, you've got to make a train. That's the stress reaction. And then further down the road, some people begin to experience stress on an ongoing basis. And this is where it can start to become very corrosive. And there are a number of effects that will spin off from this. People will become anxious, they'll become fearful, they will not want to go out, they'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. By the way, Anne, do you realise how bad everything looks at 3 o'clock in the morning? Have you ever done that?
It's the worst time, whether if you're feeling genuinely unwell or you've woke up, especially if you're worrying about something and you can't quite pinpoint it. Yeah.
I mean, I had a call from a guy today, and he said, Philip, I'm always waking up, I'm anxious about everything. And I go, and the question I asked him is what you're fearful or anxious about real? And he said, that's a strange question. He said, yeah, it's about money. I'm short of money, perpetually short of money. Well, that's interesting because a lot of people, when I ask them that question, they go, well, I don't know. I just feel anxious or I feel stressful. So the answer to a money problem, as we dealt with in previous programs, is money. And so we have to kind of deal with it through that basis. But what I'm interested in is the mechanism underneath that causes people on an ongoing basis just to constantly have this tide of stress and anxiety and fear.
It has tremendous effects on us. In fact, I think we can have a little look at, when we were preparing for the programme. It's something that will maybe highlight for you just exactly what's going on in the body, as it were, and how this whole subject of stress actually affects us physically. So if we can have a little look at that, we'll be back in just a tick.
Are you sleeping restlessly, feeling irritable or moody, forgetting little things, and feeling overwhelmed and isolated? Don't worry, we've all been there. You're probably just stressed out. Stress isn't always a bad thing. It can be handy for a burst of extra energy and focus, like when you're playing a competitive sport or have to speak in public. But when it's continuous, the kind most of us face day in and day out, it actually begins to change your brain. Chronic stress, like being overworked or having arguments at home, can affect brain size, its structure, and how it functions, right down to the level of your genes. Stress begins with something called the hypothalamus-pituitary-adrenal axis, a series of interactions between endocrine glands in the brain and on the kidney, which controls your body's reaction to stress. When your brain detects a stressful situation, your HPA axis is instantly activated and releases a hormone called cortisol, which primes your body for instant action. But high levels of cortisol over long periods of time wreak havoc on your brain. For example, chronic stress increases the activity level and number of neural connections in the amygdala, your brain's fear center. And as levels of cortisol rise, electric signals in your hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with learning, memories, and stress control, deteriorate. The hippocampus also inhibits the activity of the HPA axis, so when it weakens, so does your ability to control your stress. That's not all, though. Cortisol can literally cause your brain to shrink in size. Too much of it results in the loss of synaptic connections between neurons and the shrinking of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates behaviors like concentration, decision-making, judgment, and social interaction. It also leads to fewer new brain cells being made in the hippocampus. This means chronic stress might make it harder for you to learn and remember things, and also set the stage for more serious mental problems like depression and eventually Alzheimer's disease.
So, we really can see here that there are physical consequences to these
real changes,
genuine
real changes.
Physical consequences, tangible consequences. It's not just something out there, I'm feeling a bit stressed out. And
Dr. Bruce Lipton, many of the viewers will know his, he did a great book called The Biology of Belief. It's almost like the Bible for this kind of thing, it's good. And what he gets into is, he said, the problem is, and this goes back to what I was saying, the massive ramp up of stress. The first question I had to ask is, okay, is this really a phenomenon, or people are just complaining more than usual about it? And it got me looking into the causes of this huge wave of stress that's coming over us. And here are some of the causes. Number one, 15 years ago, Anne, there was only one world, and it was the physical one. Now we've got the internet, and we have this whole digital world. In my talks, I get into how people feel that the internet is in some way a replacement for the real world. In other words, if you don't have any real friends in the real world, you can have Facebook friends, or you can log on to forums and Instagram and Twitter and all that sort of thing. The problem with that is that the amount of new information that's literally pouring itself onto people requires the brain to process it. And that's the thing that's really starting to put us under a lot of pressure.
So you see that, this is largely responsible for this humongous increase, because Look, we've always suffered from stress. I mean, stress has been around, well, since probably human beings interacted
Well, I
with
show
one
a picture.
another,
That's right. I show a picture. When I list out nervousness, depression, anxiety, fear, feelings of doom, first question is, has it always been like this, or is this something new? The answer is, going back to World War II, during the Blitz, during the V1 and V2 assaults, and World War I, people really knew what fear and anxiety and depression were. But often, because they were kind of tougher back then, they just, you know, when they saw something horrendous, they would describe it as just having had a bad day. Today, of course, we will medicalize that and view it in a completely different light. So when we start looking at the causes, number one, too much information. And an awful lot of the information that we're processing is absolutely nothing to do with this at all. For that, we can have the news, most of which doesn't really affect us directly. We then have the whole, what we call junk values cult, which is this whole idea of plugging into celebrity, the ego, keeping up with the Kardashians, and the whole social thing that's going on, the soap operas, where we're looking at people yelling and screaming at each other. If you turn the sound down, by the way, that's all you're looking at. And that goes in, you know, and the subconscious mind doesn't make a difference between what's actually real and what's actually being portrayed.
And that's really interesting because it is that relationship that we have to understand that is really, truly helpful when we get a grip on just what's actually going on with the conscious mind, but more importantly, the subconscious mind. So I think we can have a look at something else just now that will help clarify that point, and then we can take the discussion further.
Our brain requires a great deal of energy to operate, particularly when we have to concentrate and think about something. Problem solving or making a decision not only uses more brain energy, it also can be a slow process. So our brain seeks to conserve energy by developing efficient ways of operating. One way it does this is through conscious and subconscious processing. Our brain seeks to automate much of what we do to save us time and brain energy. These are our brain's subconscious processes. They take care of our basic life functioning, our fight or flight response, and our learned behaviors and habits. We don't really think about these things, they just happen on autopilot or have become second nature. In fact, up to 95% of all our behaviors and reactions happen at the subconscious level. Our subconscious is also involved in the recording and storing of our experiences and knowledge, forming our memories. These are stored in our brain like photos in a picture album, which we can refer back to later. The way we think and feel about these experiences forms a frame around the photo. This is how we give people, objects, or events meaning. Over time, this is how our attitudes develop. For the most part, our subconscious processes help us navigate the world efficiently. Yet sometimes we might develop unhelpful habits or attitudes that prevent us from achieving our goals. This is where more conscious thinking can benefit us. Our conscious processing involves our higher thinking capacity, where we can be more mindful and considered in what we think, feel, and do. We can use conscious thinking to reprogram our subconscious and change our thoughts, attitudes, and habits. While thinking consciously takes more energy, it is how we take greater control of our brain and achieve our goals.
Well, we're going to come on to just some of the ways that you can, in actual fact, take greater control of the thought process. We'd love to hear from you this evening. It would be great. Send in your texts, your emails, details there on the screen. If we can, and thank you so much to everyone who's emailed in so far, but if we can keep it on topic this evening to stress and stress-related, otherwise, you know, we could go off on down several rabbit trails, I'm sure, and, you know, we could have you here for several hours and not even scratch the surface.
Won't be the first time.
It wouldn't be the first time, but yeah, talking of stress here and just the things that we can maybe do. We looked at, you know, a little piece on the difference between the conscious and the subconscious mind.
Right, yeah.
And we don't think we have, we just think we've got one mind and we don't differentiate between those two parts.
Yeah. What is interesting is that little clip showed that 95% of our reactions come from the subconscious. So I would give an example. It took me an hour and a half to drive here tonight through some pretty horrendous traffic, and I don't actually remember driving any of it. So the question is, who was driving? And the answer is the autopilot, the subconscious mind. This is why you can do a lot of tasks on autopilot, because the conscious mind doesn't want to expend all of that, the valuable energy doing that, so it passes it into the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is this stimulus response jukebox that the Lord has given us to automate a lot of our functions. But here's the problem. When you are being put through a stressful reaction over a 30-day period, what will happen is the conscious mind will install that stress reaction into the subconscious mind, and then it starts to trigger autonomically. So now you become a stress bunny. It's exactly the same mechanism as if you learn to play table tennis, or learn to play a piano piece, or learn the lines to a play. You keep repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating it, then it gets installed into the subconscious mind, and then it comes out naturally. And this is what you see with tennis players at Wimbledon, or troops going through basic training. They're hammering in the same training over and over and over and over again. And so the conscious mind finally goes, not going to waste any more energy on this, and files it into the subconscious mind. That's supposed to work for us, but the way it works against us, as I think in the previous program we were doing with Mark and Howard, if you turn around to a child and say, you're no good, you're useless, you're no good, keep doing that for 30 days, what is it that goes into the subconscious mind of the child? I'm no good. And that pattern will remain there. And the only way you can override that, as that clip showed, is by actually using the conscious mind to start to reprogram that particular pattern out. That takes, for instance, if you are waking up in the middle of the night anxious, your reaction is to immediately kind of hit a pause button, if you like, and then bring the conscious mind in and go, you know what, I'm going back to sleep. I'm not going to deal with this anymore. I'm not going to worry about what's going to happen tomorrow. And you've got to override that over a period of weeks, and then it's going to go away because you're going to reprogram that. So
it's like the hardware and the software almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you've got to change the software
Yes.
that you're putting in to get a different outcome.
Yeah,
if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're only going to get the same result, aren't you? So if you're constantly worried, you have to, about whatever it is. I mean, but people might say, but that's not going to make my problem go away just because I'm not worrying about it.
No, because if your problem is about money, the answer to a money problem is money. It's not Prozac, right? Nor is it waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. No. The answer to a money problem is money.
Yes.
And the answer to those types of issues, which they can be what we call social and relationship issues, are dealing with them at the foundational cause. When we talk about physical disease, one of the big problems with the health industry these days is it's not addressing foundational cause. I'm really encouraged to see just recently that they're really tackling the whole diabetes thing at foundational cause. We're seeing that happen now.
Today.
So that's good. But this whole idea that if you go to the doctor, this happened to me, I mentioned last program, that I pulled a hamstring playing squash with my dad when I was 19, went to the doctor, I was in agony, and lovely doctor, family friend, as he's getting the records out, he said, how's that new transport business of yours going, Philip? And I said, Derek, it's gone through the roof. I'm so excited I can hardly sleep. And he replied, I've got something for that. And I was put on lorazepam. And all of a sudden, I'm excited because I've just started a new business, and I'm on this drug that hijacks my brain chemistry. We've had the NHS come out and admit over the last 10 days that they estimate about 1 in every 4 people, adults in Britain, have got a problem with some of the medication they're taking in terms of the addiction or the dependency on it. So this isn't helping anybody. And in the tour, I show, in fact, I bring out psychiatrists and doctors on the screen to give their testimony firsthand. Look, this is a very simple thing to fix if we concentrate on the foundational cause of what's going on here. So when we look at things like nervousness or anxiety or indecision or worry, these are program responses a lot of the time. Yeah, there are real problems that people worry about. But again, it's 2 types of worry. Are you worrying about things you can do something about, in which case do something about them? Or are you worried about California snapping off into the Pacific Ocean after the big earthquake to end all earthquakes, or aliens landing on the White House lawn, or all of this sort of thing, Why worry? That's the thing.
And even, if it is a tangible thing like money, like relationship problems or whatever they are. You know, at the end of the day, biblically, I mean, how many times did Jesus say, do not worry, do not worry?
Yeah.
In fact, we're even told, you know, not to be anxious, as over anxiety, the Bible says, can lead to sin.
Yes, absolutely.
And I mean, sin, we're not talking about, you know, over anxiety, you know, and we'll be on the pills, but it can lead to sin.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
When you look at this from a biblical perspective, it is fascinating. It's like, well, we're undergoing some sort of on-the-job training under live fire conditions to assess our skills for the eternal kingdom, if you like. I find it fascinating that we are put through a fair amount of difficult situations to toughen up and to experience those, and at the same time know how to be able to pass that information on to others. I have an 11-year-old daughter. She's given me permission to talk about this tonight, but she'll take one look at her maths homework and start screaming. That is a that's a programmed response. You know, that's like, I can't fix it straight away, you know, and away you go.
But, you know, if we talk, you know, about the Pavlov response, you know, which is the automatic response, but that's learned behaviour because, you know, if you're going through a particularly stressful situation, and a lot, you know, of us are being, you know, we get communications via email at the moment, and it used to be the phone ringing that would make you jump because if you were going through a hard time, who was that on the
That's
phone?
right.
Now we know with the minute we switch the email on who it is straight away that's contacting us, and sometimes just by seeing an email from an institution, organisation, or it could be an individual, will give you that absolute leap in your stomach before you've even read the body of the email. That surely is a programmed response.
Yeah, so what's the answer to that? Switch off the computer.
Yeah,
right?
throw away the...
My granny said it's not true until you can see it from your garden gate. Good old Gran, she went through 2 world wars, right? And she was looking at stuff from her garden gate. It's a trite analogy, but what it shows us is how much stuff we're having to deal with that really...
We're
bombarded with stuff that if we switched it off tomorrow, we would actually feel we're just addicted to it because, again, we've been doing Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and WhatsApp, and we're buried in this all the time. And this is creating issues for our brain in terms of having to process all of this information.
Well, you know, we've been talking about overthinking and how we actually combat that, and we'll come back to that in just a second. Just want to read a couple of emails here quickly. No name on either of them. Hi, Anne and Philip. I suffer with most of the symptoms that were described in the television clip that we just saw. I'm struggling with loss of memory and trying to get my words out. Worried about my brain shrinking, etc., as described. Can these symptoms be reversed?
Great question. The answer is absolutely. The brain is very malleable. It's very programmable, and it will adapt to what you use it the most for. One of the big issues is that a lot of people are not taking a break from this whole onslaught of information. Let me give you an example. If you're buried in your day-to-day work and then you're coming home and then you're watching the TV and you're reading all your emails and you're doing some social media as well, when are you ever taking a break from that? Because when you go on holiday, you're taking your phone with you, and even if you're at some resort, in the Mediterranean, for instance, you're still not switching off from that whole thing. So people are just getting more and more cranked tight with this. So you hear about the expression digital detox. This is simply just putting the whole thing down and just walking away from it. It's something I've had to learn how to do because I'm a very impulsive writer. I love to write. And also I'm getting huge numbers of emails coming in all the time. But I have to program it so that I have a weekend off. Or I just got through having 2.5 months completely clean of all of this. And it's absolutely necessary to do that. The other problem is the Pavlov period is 30 days programming, and we're not taking 30-day holidays, which would help clear that. We're only taking 2-week holidays.
So for people out there who, haven't got the possibility of going away for a month's holiday or shutting off down the computer or their phones off, for any lengthy period of time, or maybe they need to be contactable if they've got a sick relative or someone in hospital or whatever. What would you suggest? Would you suggest even getting a couple of hours every day? Would you suggest time out in the evening? Is that enough? Would that help?
The first thing that people can do is shut down the input. In other words, look at all the stuff that's coming into that brain and just halve it immediately. That can be things like TV. I mean, even my 11-year-old said to me, she's saying to me, Dad, I'm bored. Good. What do you mean good? Just relax, just chill, breathe in. You know, that's just, it freaks an 11-year-old out because they're on the go all the time. Number one, shut the input down, and that's the first step to getting control over your emotions, because immediately the brain is starting to see a bit of daylight and it's not just on this constant onslaught of information processing.
We've got another email here. This is from Joan. Thank you very much, Joan. She says, good evening. I had a fall a few years ago and I lost my memory. I have been very stressed. I was told I have a shadow on my brain. What does that mean? I declined to take, what's the drug? Begins with an X. I can't remember how you pronounce it. Is it Xanax? Is it?
Xanax?
Yeah.
Okay.
Xanax, yes. What can I do to reduce the stress? God bless you both. That's from Joan. So, a shadow on the brain. Are you familiar with this?
That could be anything. I mean, if the key is that the medical world is very good at, generally pretty good at diagnosis. So they should be able to tell you whether that's a physical problem or whatever it is. But either way, there's a whole heap of things, Joan, that we can start doing to clear that out. Number one, identify, if you can, the cause of your anxiety. Can you put a finger on it? Yeah. Is it a relative? Is it a bad relationship? Is it a bad job? Or is it...
I was saying a lot of it's memory loss from this fall. So maybe you've got a physical accident that's had a physical outcome that's stressful. Because you're losing your memory. That's stressful, obviously, Alzheimer's. I'm not saying that's what it is, but anything like that is stressful.
The first clip was talking about how the brain will rewire itself if you put it under a fair amount of instruction. So start to have memory exercises, which are great at rewiring the way the brain works. The brain is very malleable. It's very adaptable. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, they say things like even, doing like Scrabble crosswords, any of these, learning a language, the basics of a language, anything to do that exercise.
I think a lot of people also get a little worried because all of a sudden they can't remember the name of their high school friend or this or that. And the thing here is that the brain will bring, the recall will be very good for stuff that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. It's less good if you're trying to recall something that you thought about maybe 5 weeks ago or even 5 months ago. And that freaks a lot of people out because, that's the beginning of it, No, it's not. It's just the way the brain, the conscious mind will prioritize retrieving information that you're using. It's a bit like your browser. Your browser has like a cache and it's recalling information out. And so the more you're interacting with people on a day-to-day basis, that's the information you're going to receive. Now, if you suddenly throw a curved ball at the brain and go, okay, what was the name of my sports teacher in 1964? The brain's going to go, and then you're going to think you've got Alzheimer's. No, you haven't. It's just you've got to go back and relearn that.
Just when you're talking about that, I'm thinking, gosh, and this is happening with me. I don't know if it's just an age thing or not, but sometimes, I hear other people that have this as well, though, but it seems to be happening more with me. I go into a room and I forget what I've gone in there for. Or,
Do you know what I did today? I have a problem because when I finish at the office, I'm usually the last one out. That shows how dedicated I am. But I'm usually the last one out of the office. And then what I'll do is I'll lock the office up, get in my car, drive off down the road, and I'll be 2 miles down the road and I'll go, did I lock the office? So you know what I do now? When I lock the office, I in a very mechanical fashion, I say, I am now locking the office. The office is now being locked by me.
And what you doubt, I mean, again, if you're busy, you've got a lot on, you doubt, so you think, did I do this? Did I switch the iron? Did I unplug the iron?
Because you're on autopilot at that point. You're leaving the office, you're getting in the car, none of that's being done on the conscious mind because your conscious mind is thinking about whatever it's thinking about. But the moment you start saying, I'm locking the office now, or I'm putting the cat out. I mean, I put the dog out the other day. It was out for 4 hours out in the garden. And it was like looking up at me going, what did I do wrong, Because my brain was in another area.
You're so right. It's like so much information, I'm thinking like, I can have like 3 or 4 screens on the go at any one time. And I think, I need to do that, right. And then I see something, I get distracted. I'll just feed the cat, for example, first. Then I go on the iPad or the tablet, whatever, to do what it was I was going to do a minute ago, totally forgotten. Now, I do remember, but it's just, you're so right. I think this is just the unadulterated bombardment.
We're plate spinners. We're spinning those plates.
Yes.
You know, like they do. They spin a plate and then they spin another one, and that one's slowing down. We've got to spin that one back up again, and we're running around
maybe
like crazy people. And this is why we've got to. Yeah, this is why we've really got to just relax.
Yeah, and just let a few of the plates fall, because very often it's not the end of the world anyway. We just think.
And they're not my plates.
Not your place. We've got, and this is no name on this one, what a shame. Please, my anxiety is to do with loneliness, feeling overwhelmed with it, and life skills and difficulties, and having to do everything alone without family. She's 60, I say he or she is 60 years old, help. Okay. 68 years old, help.
I've got a big section in the Break Free talk where we deal with loneliness, and here's the thing.
Is that related to stress?
Yes, it can be.
Yeah.
It can. They estimate there's 8 million people in Britain who are living alone, which doesn't mean 8 million people are lonely, it just means they're living alone. Mm-hmm. Now, we are social creatures, so we want to be able to interact with others. And here's the thing, we're hardwired to interact and experience each other face to face. Now, I know this is ironic because we're on TV at the moment, but we're not designed or wired to interact with each other through screens. Electronically. It's almost like the internet is a fake world. You hear about fake news and fake food. Well, fake world, you know. You can immerse yourself. I play this amazing bit of video in the talk where you can immerse yourself in these digital environments and move around them, and they're huge, they're massive, they go off hundreds of miles, and you're aware that you're walking, but you're not. You're sitting in your chair with a virtual reality screen on looking at it, or you're experiencing things online which is not the real world. And this is where we've really got to be extremely careful, because all of this technology is very new, and the possibilities, while they're exciting, are having dramatic effect. I mean, look how the shopping habits have changed and ripped the hearts out of our high street. This is a second industrial revolution we're happening, but it's a digital revolution. And we've got the advent of 5G, which everyone is, worried about as well, and we won't go quite into that. We could do a whole program on that, by the way.
Maybe we will.
But the key is, going back to the loneliness, local clubs. There's lots of villages and towns that are setting up gardening clubs where people get together. I need to get out of the house and go meet some real people, so not that people who live in my home aren't real, but I need to go and meet other people.
Your daughter might have something to say
well,
about
they're
that.
meeting other people as well. But I'm part of the local village heritage group, so every Saturday we go down, we meet, and we're in the pub actually, and we meet, and there's about 6-7 people part of that. So we're seeing gardening groups cropping up, we're seeing people helping other people, we're seeing local clubs. There's a lot you can do in your own neighbourhood.
Even if we were talking earlier on about, learning a new skill, even something like, the basics of learning another language, rather than do it online or, try and learn it via YouTube or something like that, actually go and attend a class.
Yeah.
And maybe have a look at what classes are available. And even, it's not about necessarily what you're going to learn. It's the whole getting out the house, really, and going and meeting some new people.
Yeah, that's the key.
And don't give up at the first hurdle.
The key here is there's loads of clubs, because there's lots of people that are like you. If you're lonely and you're at home, there's lots of people like you who are also looking to get out and I'm not saying you can't use the internet to hook up with people. The bottom line is, though, that the relationship has to be face-to-face. We have to experience each other face-to-face. It's how the Lord would have it. And, I'm not going to attribute the internet to Satan or anything like that, but there's a real dark side to the very subtle effects of screens, and we've seen all the big... I found it interesting. Do you know what I found out the other day? The top tech magicians, the people that run the top tech companies, do not give iPads to their kids. They minimize the amount of digital...
They know.
They know. They've seen the studies, and they know that this is a problem. And, we've seen various stories appearing in the press. I like Katie Allsop, breaking the iPad in front of her kids. I don't think you have to be that medieval about it, but there's a lot of problems out there with tech addiction. And so what we've got to come back to is one very important word: balance. we cannot demonize screen behavior in kids because that is the world of their future. Long after you and I are gone, computers are going to be here. The key is balance. It's like everything else. And managing it, of course, you know.
Yeah.
Make it our servant, not our master, you know.
It's a question of control. And I think stress, if you think about being stressed, is when you feel out of control, when you feel you have no control. Sometimes with certain issues, I'm beginning to wonder if we're actually meant to be in control, or if we just need to get our head round the fact that we are never, and I'm guilty of that myself as an individual. It's like trying to tick all of the boxes. That can be really stressful.
I get people ask a very important question. What do I wish to accomplish by bedtime tonight? Like when you wake up in the morning, ask that question. What do I wish to accomplish by bedtime tonight? What do I need to do today so when I get back in this bed tonight, I'll feel completely fulfilled, I would have done everything I'm supposed to do. And there's a very important process happening here, because what you're doing is agreeing with yourself in advance what matters, what's sufficient for the day, right? And so long as we do that, then any other extraneous stuff that comes, you know, cannonballing in at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you can just kind of push it to one side, or at least schedule it for another time. So when you get back into the bed tonight, did I get everything done? Yeah, pretty much. And you're relaxed about it because you've agreed with yourself in advance that that's sufficient for the day. And nothing more than that.
One of the ways that I manage my life is, it's a very old-fashioned way, and it's a diary. It's actually a physical diary, and it's the pen comes out. It's not on a screen, and I will have, you know, it's a week to 2 pages, and I look at my week and I have the things that I need to do, and yeah, there's something quite. It de-stresses me the more I can just tick off. But sometimes I've got to be careful, because those pages, they can stress me out looking at them, because sometimes I can't even read the amount of stuff that I've got on there, and then to transfer it on to the next day, because I just think I'm too stressed out with this. You know, a lot of this doesn't actually have to be done today. And I think that's really interesting what you say. It's all about prioritizing and realizing, I mean, are we really meant to be in control? I don't, you know, there's responsibility for managing the day, but you're never going to control everything. You're not in control of, you know, there's just certain things that are outside of our control, and we need to accept that. Does that sound like I'm talking to me here?
I think actually I've noticed it's actually become easier as I've got older, because I've started to, you know, you mature in not having to eat the whole world in one go. You know, you're just going to spread it out and not stuff the entire week up. That's the important thing, and just being able to relax a little bit more.
I've just had an email come through, and I think you're going to like this one. It says, it's from Anthony. Thank you, Anthony. Evening, Philip and Anne. As a former carer, I now live on my own and wish to start a new venture / career. Is 58 years too old to start from scratch a new career venture, like training to be a psychiatrist, ? etc. God bless Anthony. Thank you very much, Anthony. Funnily enough, before the programme, we were kind of talking about things like that, about new careers and starting new things.
Yeah.
And, you know, when a lot of people would be thinking, no, you're kind of on a downward trail. I think I know.
I've got 2 questions to ask to Anthony. Anthony, are you over 18? Yes. Can you fog a mirror? Yes. Go for it.
No, but and I think that is so important. And you address some of this on your tour as well, where you talk about dream weavers and dream killers. Just tell us a little bit about what you mean by that.
Yeah, everybody has got a dream. Everybody has got something tucked away that they think they really want to do. And then there are those people who go, oh, well, you're never going to be any good at that, Anne. I mean, just forget it. You know, put your feet on the floor and get into the real world. Those are the dream killers. Yeah. They live in our house, and they could even be part of the family, of course, and they're friends as well. Oh, you can't possibly ever do that. I wish I could have £1 for every time somebody said that to me. Oh, you'll never be an author. You'll never do this, never do that. The answer is get down and do it. Now, the key is don't let the dream consume you, because you've got to still make a living, and you've still got to, you know, make sure the bills are met. But there's this very special thing. There's this talent. I ask everybody in the talks, what are you good at? Because every single person in the audience is very good at at least one thing, and a lot of them are pretty good at a whole bunch of things, and they're not doing anything with it.
Yeah.
They're not. I wanted to be a painter, I wanted to be a writer, I wanted to write a film script, or I wanted to learn a language, or I wanted to visit Egypt, but I'm too frightened of what's going on in the news, and da-da-da-da-da. And so the dream gets killed at that point because they've agreed with themselves in advance that they're never going to do it. I'm saying it's free to dream. It doesn't cost you anything just to think, what if? And that's how I started out as a writer. I sat down and they said, you would never be able to write a book. It's not half as easy as it sounds. So I sat down that night and wrote the first 3 pages of a book, went away, and I felt great after that.
Look at your books now. Look at the amount of books that you've written, even just looking at the Origin series, and, you know, absolutely incredible. But they all started as an idea in your mind that you could.
But you've actually got to start doing it. That's the whole thing, you know. Yeah. You've got to stop thinking about it, and then you've got to actually. Okay, so you want to write a screenplay, write the first 2 pages, or 3 or 4 pages, 3 minutes or 4 minutes of whatever film or TV program.
Procrastination's the enemy, isn't it? Where you think,
well,
I haven't got enough money, well, I'm too old, well, I'm too young, well, I'm too this or too that, or I don't have enough qualifications or whatever. We can come up with a whole host of reasons as to why we can't do something.
I think one of the great antidotes to stress is being able to change your physical environment. What do I mean by that? It means if the stress is in your house, then go to the park or go into a forest. We're very fortunate where I live that about 15 minutes down the road, we have a massive forest, Bedgebury Forest. And you can go from being buried in all of the work to being on a bike and going through pines in the middle of nowhere in about 20 minutes. And all of a sudden, you're having this forest bath, I think they call it these days. And the effects of being out there for an hour are absolutely tremendous.
That's where you must leave your technology at home if you want to.
Oh, I do. It stays. I put the bike in the van. The phone stays in the front of the van.
Absolutely.
And that's it. But geography, your physical placement is very, very important, because when we talk about people breaking patterns, one of the most effective ways of doing this is to go visit some relatives in Scotland, or go visit that cousin that you've got in Spain, and stay down there for a couple of weeks, if you can, a month. And lots of people have written to me over the years going, you know what, you always keep coming out with this, go farm Christmas trees in Montana for 6 months. Well, actually, I went round America for about 4 months, came back, and I was a brand new person at the end of it. And I get emails like that all the time. People
Which is absolutely so encouraging. And the other thing as well, obviously, you know, if you're physically able, you know, one way, and we've spoken about this on different programs, is, you know, if you count your blessings, if you look at what you're grateful for in life, if you look outside yourself, and therefore, fine to make a list of, you know, what you would like to do, but if you look outside yourself and think, well, who can I help? And you think, well, if I don't really know anybody, listen, there are hospitals, there are prisons out there, there are all sorts of places that people will be falling over themselves to say, yeah, do you want to come in and visit some people here, because they don't have anybody. And, you know, that's a way to get into your bed at night feeling that, yeah, what did I achieve today? Yes, I did actually achieve something.
I think I say to everybody, God has given each of us talents, you know, and I haven't come across anybody who has not had a talent. What are you doing with it? That's the good question is, if you can actually pursue your talent for what you get out of the talent, so that activity is worth doing in and of itself, that's how you become the most relaxed and the most fulfilled.
And also, you know, when you said a moment ago about, you know, what do you enjoy doing? What about the dreams you have? Also, one question that I used to ask, this was many, many years ago in a different career when I used to run seminars, kind of like a lot of on this subject. One of the questions I would ask was, what do you do that you enjoy that actually comes easily to you? That other people would say, oh no, I'm rubbish at that, or that's really difficult, but you just love it. And I mean, that can just be sorting out systems, that can be administration, that can be public speaking, that can be cooking, that can be, these are all indications and pointers of where you need to give your attention. Because if you can do it effortlessly, that is a gift.
I had when I lived in California, I had a billionaire come up to me, and he said to me, I could never do what you do. I go, what do you mean? He goes, if I sometimes get asked to get up and speak in public, it just freaks me out. I can't even do that. And when I see how you get up and do it, I could never even do that. This guy, the money he's got, but here's a guy who's fallen short in one particular area, and yet I get people all the time going, oh, I really want to go out and start public speaking, or I want to become an actor or an actress, or I want to do something with my life. Then fine, take the step out and do it. And keep doing it. That's how I started, and that's how a lot of people...
Absolutely. So there's things that you maybe know you can do, that you've got a natural leaning towards, that God has blessed you with. But then there's a whole load more, I believe, under the surface, and you never know what you can do until you try it.
I never forget hearing Arnold Schwarzenegger saying, you've got 24 hours every day, you sleep for 6, that gives you 18 hours. And then one person said, well, I need to sleep for 8 hours. He goes, sleep faster.
Nice one, like it. We've got more emails coming in, thank you very much. One says at 63, had first clarinet lesson today, joined a choir last week, definitely the better for it already.
Brilliant.
Isn't that really good? I'm retired. I moved from South Africa to Ireland a few years ago. I love writing and attend a writing group in Dublin. I plan to write a memoir. The writing has saved me. And I think there's more and more people out there that once they actually try things out, that maybe they'd love to do. I think fear of failure, maybe if we can talk for a few moments, that's a big blockage for so many of us.
I got some brilliant news on this. It goes back to what we were talking about before the programme started, and also this writer who's come from South Africa to Ireland. If you do... Let's imagine you play the piano, and you play the piano for the joy of playing the piano. In other words, it's worth doing in and of itself. That's what's known as an intrinsic motivation, and that's what gives you the most relaxed fulfillment that you can get. The opposite of that is you playing the piano in a bar in order to make money to pay your rent. That's now using that piano playing for some external reason, and that's an extrinsic, or you're playing the piano to show off, or whatever. That's an extrinsic motivation, and that's a problem because you're never going to be able to get satisfaction from doing that. So when you find an activity, like gardening, people garden because they want their garden to be admired by people, that's extrinsic. But if you get out and start digging the weeds out because that's therapy for you and you enjoy it, that's intrinsic, and that's where you get that deep-seated satisfaction. So we
need to look for the activities that
please you in and of themselves, and
that have no other ulterior motive.
There's two. If I write a book, I get a pleasure out of doing that, and the marketing of the book, or whether or not anyone even buys it, is just something. It's totally different. Forget all that. I enjoy the very process of being able to create something on a page or on a film script or anything like that. That's me. That's who I am, and that's what people need to look for.
And of course, you know, if you think about the ultimate, well, it's not the ultimate, but for people who actually earn money doing what they would do if they never got paid for it. By that, I'm talking about being an amazing tennis player or, you know, an amazing musician that people actually
How many of those people started out and their relatives said, waste of time, you're never going to do that, you'll never get anywhere doing that? They all say the same thing. Oh, yeah, we had all the dream killers around us, but we did it anyway. Why? Because we did that because it pleased us in and of itself, and they just became famous for doing that, you know.
And also, you know, I mean, it might be slightly off topic, but I'm thinking, why do you kill a dream anyway? It's usually because the person killing the dream in others have not fulfilled their dream themselves.
That's exactly right.
And they don't want, it's like somebody sitting there, you know, it took you 3 attempts to pass your driving test. Somebody's going out for their driving test and then they're thinking inwardly, I hope they don't pass first time because I didn't.
That's right.
Even if it was 30 years ago. What on earth, you know? It's like, you've got to put all that down and you know, and encourage people.
I mean, we like nothing better, many of us, than seeing somebody famous crashing in the newspapers in some way, because we never got as successful as they are. But here they come down to our level.
Oh, no, you're right.
And isn't that satisfying? You know, that's normally an admission of personal failure, that you deep down, you're incredibly frustrated.
And if you think about what gossip is, and whether you're taking that in a kind of soap mentality that we see on our television screens, or just gossip. What is the purpose of gossip? And for, you know, just remembering what the Bible says about it, you know, it's choice morsels that go down to the innermost parts. that just shows you what about the heart being, desperately wicked and evil.
Yeah.
Because gossip is never usually about, hey, did you hear somebody got a job that they were after? Or, hey, nobody knows yet, but somebody's done really well at something. Normally, it's a negative. And that's why it's a choice morsel, which just shows you a lot of us are getting some sort of satisfaction out of someone else having problem or
well, again,
or
this is
issue.
the whole idea of keeping up with the Joneses. It's extrinsic, and that's the thing that's very corrosive, because you're doing it for not immoral reasons, but those aren't the things that satisfy us deep within. The things that satisfy that deep within are the things that the Lord gave us in terms of our skills, and doing that and celebrating our ability to be able to do those things.
And then don't forget that when we're born again and filled with the Spirit of God, He has put inside of us a new heart. We have His Spirit. The Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead is resident in us. Therefore, we do not have to go with the tide. What is it they say again? It's only dead fish that swim with the tide.
Right.
We get up every morning, we read God's word, we read what He's saying, we renew ourselves, we renew our mind. And we're told in the Bible that we need to renew our mind.
Yes.
Because with everything that you've described...
I think, what I think renewing the mind is? Renewing the mind is coming off autopilot, and it's engaging the conscious mind actively to decide how we're going to spend this day that's ahead of us. It's not just how many times do we leap out of bed, just do our things in the morning ablutions, and then go off to work, and it's all been done on autopilot, and we don't remember any of it. So sad. A very successful business owner said to me, he said, my son is now 16, and the last time I remembered him was when he was 7. I don't know where the years went. In other words, he's been all those years, 9 years on autopilot, and never really had the chance to experience his son growing up.
Yeah. Absolutely. We have moments left, so just going to read another couple of emails very quickly. Hi, Anne. Great to see you back. Great show with Philip, as always. Here's my tip on how to avoid stress. This is from Jeff, by the way. Great to hear from you, Jeff. Stop trying to do stuff all the time and practice being bone idle. I love being bone idle. It's great, and I suggest everybody try it. Mind you, my bone idleness does stress the wife. A little bit of tongue-in-cheek there from Jeff, which is excellent. On topic, but off just slightly, very quickly, dear Philip, please could you tell me what is the best natural remedy treatment to help my son who suffers from OCD? And she goes on to say some of the way that manifests itself. Is there anything...
The OCD comes in with a lot of these psychiatric problems where there are no physical tests to diagnose them.
Yeah.
No chemicals run awry, there are no PET scans, urine tests, or anything to diagnose this. A lot of OCD can be programming, it can be Pavlov, some of it. In other words, OCD would be me locking up the office and then going down the road and going, well, did I lock it up? And then going back again. That's a patterning problem. And that's where you take the conscious mind to override that. Now, in previous shows, what we've looked at is getting the vitamin D sorted out, getting the diet sorted out, getting off sugar, boosting the beneficial fats, getting some exercise, learning to manage our stress, hydrating properly. These are the obvious things that we can do first. But initially, with OCD, we're looking at a patterning issue. Was this always the case, or was there a particular point in that child's life
Sometimes
where...
there's an event that...
There's an event that might have just started that whole thing off, and it'd be worth just going back and having a look and seeing if that's the case.
I can't believe where the time's gone. We're nearly out
That's
of
it?
time.
You don't get long, do you?
No, you don't. You don't. It's a little bit like what Arnie was saying about can we...
Sleep faster.
Yeah, well, can we just extend the time on this programme a little bit? I'm really sorry, a lot of texts are coming through now, and as always, there's never enough time to read them all out. But I really do thank you, Philip, and just want to do one final, just encouragement for people that, your tour's still continuing.
It's a lot of fun, this. It's not a heavy thing. If you come along and see what it's all about, we have a lot of fun with it. lot of laughs, and we get the job
A
done.
lot of laughs, and you're talking about getting,
Yeah, we're talking about some pretty heavy stuff, but when you see what's underneath it, it's like wisps in the night. That's really what it is if you tackle it the right way.
Absolutely. So see if you can get yourself along. Of course, you can go on to credence.org and see where the various tours are taking place. I will be back in a month's time, in 4 weeks' time. That will be a Halloween special. So do look out for that on, of course, Our Times. But great to have you here, Philip. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks for the emails. See you very soon.